So my name is Laura and I'm a final year psychology and sociology student. And my research is on stress and social support in working informal carers. My research was supervised by Dr. Stephen Gallagher. So before I begin, I'm just going to go through some key concepts that I'm going to be talking about throughout the study or through the presentation, and they link to the study. So to begin, informal carers are carers who are usually family members, and they're usually they care for a family member, and they're usually unpaid for this work. For example, mothers and fathers of people with developmental disabilities. So that's who I focus my research on. And developmental disabilities refer to lifelong mental or physical disabilities, and they manifest early in life and are caused by a mental and or physical impairment. So an example of this would be blindness or Down syndrome or autism spectrum disorder. Then another concept that will be discussed is perceived stress. So I'm sure we all know what perceived stress is, but just to give a definition, it's feelings or thoughts that an individual has about how much stress they're under at a given time or in a given point in time. And social support refers to it holds the idea of formal and informal support. So formal supports would be mainly professional services that are offered by organisations and agencies, and they can serve both the child and the parent, whereas informal supports would refer to physical and emotional services or assistance provided by non-professionals such as family or friends. So now I'll just move on to background research in this area on parents of children with developmental disabilities. So a lot of research has found that stress in parents of children with developmental disabilities is much higher than parents of typically developing children. As you would expect, it's a very hard role. And interestingly, also, it has been found that these parents of children with developmental disabilities have lower social support than the typically developing parents of typically developing children. And this is interesting because there's a lot of research in the interaction of social support and stress, and a lot of research shows that social support is predictive of stress. So this is known as the stress buffering hypothesis, which means that where social support is higher, it will protect against stress and its negative affects. So one source of social support might be employment. So right. Screen is after freezing. Okay, there we go. So yes, social support. Employment is a source of social support, and as you can see, employed parents have higher social support than unemployed parents, and social support. Employment can offer the opportunity for parents to talk about their stressors, to have a break from their caring responsibilities, to gain friends where they can from there have non-care related socializing opportunities. So as a result, very often research has found that stress is lower in employed parents. So with this background in mind, the aim of my research was to find to investigate the difference in stress and social support between parents of a child with developmental disabilities and control parents, to investigate the difference in stress and social support between employed parents and unemployed parents. And then my final aim focused on just parents of children with developmental disabilities, and I wanted to find the effect of social support on the relationship between employment status and stress. So this was qualitative research, and we recruited 173 participants, 115 of which were parents of children with developmental disabilities, and these included autism spectrum disorder and mixed disabilities. And our control parents, we had 58 of them. So participants were given a questionnaire. They were asked a variety of socio-demographic questions. They were asked, were they employed outside of the home? And they were given 2 self-report questionnaires, one on perceived stress and one on perceived social support. So our first finding was that, as you can see in the bar chart, between parents of children with developmental disabilities and control parents, you can clearly see that perceived stress was much higher in our parents of children with developmental disabilities. And we can also see that within the groups, there wasn't much variance between employed and unemployed, as we would have thought there would have been. So that was not statistically significant, the difference. But the difference in stress between the parent group was. Similarly, the difference in social support between parent group was significant, with parents of children with developmental disabilities much lower than controlled parents. And again, we could see there was a slight difference within the groups based on their employment, but this wasn't significant. So moving on, we then looked at within the parents of children with developmental disabilities, and we found that there was no relationship between employment status and social support within this group. And we also found that when social support was controlled for, there was no relationship between employment status and perceived stress. However, we did find that social support was related to and predictive of perceived stress within this group, as we expected. Also, the main aim of our third part of our research was to see was the relationship between employment status and perceived stress affected by the social support that came with employment, but we did not find this relationship. So just to summarize my findings, overall, parents of children with developmental disabilities reported higher stress and lower social support than controlled parents, and that when employment status was controlled for, social support significantly predicts stress in parents of children with developmental disabilities. So what does this mean? The low level of social support and high level of stress highlights the need for informal carers to be provided with and seek more social support to alleviate this high stress they suffer with. Furthermore, we can see that employment status did not significantly contribute to social support as we would have expected. And this highlights that perhaps workplaces in Ireland need to support parents more by creating an environment for sharing concerns and facilitating flexible hours and commitments, and any other policies they could do to increase the social support working parents feel. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening, and if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.